We are dealing with chapter 8 here with Mounce and the prepositions. If you remember from our prior discussion, prepositions are relational words. Okay, so Mounce chapter 8. Why are they called prepositions? What's the pre in preposition mean?
Before.
Before. What does position? What does the posit mean in position? Placement. Okay, so the pre is before, position means placement. Prepositions then are, in Greek as in English, words that are placed before other words. So let's take an example. Apa, tu, theou. What does theou mean? God, right? Apa, I'm going to put it should be an acute accent, but with the word following, it turns to the grave accent, right? So apa is my preposition, and tu theou is what's called the object of the preposition. Okay? Prepositions always go before the object of the preposition in Greek and in English. Sometimes we think of Greek as being very free in its word order, don't we? But the truth of the matter is there are some things that are fixed in terms of their word order, and one of them is the matter of the preposition. It's called a preposition because it's always posed or placed before, has a position before the object of the preposition. So you wouldn't see something like tu theou apa, okay? It's always apa tu theou. By the way, what does that mean? From God. From God. All right?
So
this is...
Isn't the hint it also say away? Like away from God?
You could say away from God. That would be an appropriate translation as well. Now, in English, we always put our prepositions in front of the object of the preposition too, don't we? We say from God, not God from. Right? There are other languages in the world that don't put their prepositions in front of the object of the preposition. They go after the object of the preposition. And yeah, it really does happen. Right? Chinese does it like that, right? Yeah. And the Korean does it like that. So many Asian languages. So what would they call these if they put the preposition after the object of the preposition? Yes, they wouldn't call them prepositions at all. They would be postpositions. Exactly. And so as not to prejudice the pre versus post position, some grammarians like to refer to them as adpositions. Isn't that sweet? Politically correct? Adpositions. That just means that you put it at some place around the object of the preposition. Okay? So, but in Greek they are prepositions. Now, one other thing that is important to remember is that prepositions are going to take an object of the preposition. The case of the object of the preposition will not be what case? Yes, it will not be nominative case. It could be in genitive, dative, or accusative case, but not nominative case. Beautiful. The same is true, well, sort of true in English, right? We don't have a full developed case system, but in English, if I had something like from John, can you tell what case John is in? No, because English doesn't have a case system. But for the pronoun, if I wanted to replace John with a pronoun, which pronoun would I use?
Him.
Yeah, I wouldn't say from he, because he is what case? Subjective, right? In English, we don't use nominative and accusative and dative, right? We say subjective case, okay, is he. Him is objective case. His is possessive case.
That guy.
That guy. Yes. All right. So we do change the case when we can change the case in English to a different case than the nominative or the subjective case. Okay? So this is true in Greek. Now, in Greek, the preposition is going to have its own distinctive meaning. So what does apa mean? From or away from, right? So from, away from. Now go to the back of the chapter of Mounce, chapter 8, ends on 60. The vocabulary section is with 61. And let's, for a minute, walk through the prepositions that are on the list, okay? So we'll skip the words Allah. We've already talked about apa. Why don't we go ahead and talk about the matter of how the prepositions will change their form. You know how nouns change their form based on case endings. So they are inflected for their function in the sentence, and the inflectional endings are the case endings. Prepositions are not inflected forms, so they're not going to change their form based on any function. They are going to change their form based on spelling conventions, okay? And pronunciation issues. And so if I have a preposition that ends with a vowel, and apa is one such preposition that does, many prepositions that end with vowels are going to lose the vowel if the next word, that is to say the object of the preposition, begins with a vowel. Because what I'm going to have, if I don't lose the vowels, I'm going to have two vowels in consecutive order, right? And just like in English, when we want to say some apple using the indefinite article a, we have the sequence of a versus another vowel. What do? Yes, we insert an N to break up that vowel sequence, don't we? Well, what's going to happen here is if I have apa followed by the word apostle, I've got an omicron followed by an alpha. What's Greek going to do here? Yeah, we're going to drop the final vowel of the preposition, and we're going to replace it with what? An apostrophe right there.
So you would still say it the same though?
So no, you're not going to pronounce the O anymore, the omicron. So it's apostolu. Apostolu. Not apa-apostolu, but apostolu. So how many vowels am I going to hear after the P? This P.
One.
Just one, and it's going to be the alpha of apostolu. Okay?
So if there is a definite article in front of apostolu, do you still see it apa?
Yes,
Like,
because...
so you have like two
Mhm.
apostolu.
Right. Remember, ha, hey, hoi, and hi, those are the only forms of the article that don't start with a tau. That's a Hebrew T, tau. That don't start with a tau, right? So since these are nominative case, will I ever see these forms of the article after a preposition? No, I'm always going to see, if I have an article, it's going to be an article form that starts with a tau. Okay? So I'll never drop the vowel on the preposition if there's an article following. So here I had to choose a form of a noun, right, that starts with a vowel. And what is this thing called right here that looks like a smooth breathing? That's an apostrophe. This alpha has above it a smooth breathing. This alpha has above it a smooth breathing. But this is not a smooth breathing because it's not above a vowel. It is an apostrophe, which happens to have the word apa prefix to it. Okay? So that's an apostrophe. And what is it called when the vowel falls out? It's called elision. That's a noun, elision. To elide is the verb. Okay, so the vowel elides, and the result is elision. Okay, so Here's another thing to think about. If my vowel starts with a smooth breathing and I drop the omicron, the P right here gets to stay what it is. But what if I had something like horon, which is the word for hours, and I wanted to say something like from hours? What would happen here? Well, the omicron would fall out, right? So we will delete that. We will put a, what kind of breathing mark? Or I mean, what kind of a mark? Not a breathing mark. Apostrophe right here. But now, what kind of breathing is this over the omega? That is a rough breathing, right? What does a rough breathing signify?
Aspiration.
Yes. So we're aspirating. We are breathing an H sound out along with that vowel. Ho-ro. Okay? Now, when you pronounce an H sound along with the vowel, does that H sound start and stop in an instant? No. You're going to hear the friction of the H as long as you're producing the O sound as well, right? Ho-ron. And you're breathing air. What's happening to the airflow when you produce the P sound? Make a P sound. What has to happen to the airflow to create a P sound? It has to completely stop, doesn't it? So I am in two contiguous syllables trying to both stop airflow and blow it through the H sound. Now that's difficult, isn't it? Up. Up. What's going to happen here? The P is going to change. Okay? I jokingly refer to this as the principle of linguistic laziness. What does a P become when you're blowing air through the P instead of stopping all the air? It becomes a phi. Exactly. So that's why we're going to see horon. Horon. Okay. I'm going to get a fricative P, which is a F sound, when I have a rough breathing. Okay. If I don't have a rough breathing, there's no need to change the P to the phi. Okay. And we're going to see this with several other prepositions. I will have the stop consonant version, and I'm going to have the fricative version. Okay? Yes, Yvonne?
This is only with prepositions.
Right now it is.
Right now, we're just going to
Yes.
focus on
Mm-hmm. Right. If we can get this, when we see some of these sorts of changes later, it'll make sense to us why it
So
happens.
if it's a pie, and the next word has a rough breathing mark, it's going to change into
A phi.
a phi. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So P becomes
All
phi.
the time with prepositions.
Right. Yep. Okay. All right. So, if you look at your lexicon or your word vocab list here, the word gen is right there before the English gloss away from. So what does gen tell you here?
It takes the genitive.
Okay, so the word gen means that it takes its object of the preposition in the genitive case. Okay? Now, when we learn the genitive case, we learn that a noun all by itself in the genitive case could be translated with the meaning of the noun plus a keyword for your translation. What was that keyword? Yes, the keyword for the genitive keyword was of, right? Now that's true when the noun occurs in isolation from a preposition. But here I have the preposition apa with a noun in the genitive case. And why is it in the genitive case? Because apa requires its object to be in the genitive case. Okay? That's just the way this preposition works. Every object of the preposition apa must be in the genitive case. And when that's the case, then I am not going to use the keyword of in the translation because the preposition itself has a meaning. Okay? I don't need the keyword at this point. The meaning of apa, or in this case ap, is what? From. So I don't want to translate this as from and then look at the genitive of apostolou and say of apostle, right? Because from of apostle is meaningless. You see? Do not use the keyword for translating the genitive case here. Just translate the meaning of the preposition and then the meaning of the noun. Okay? If it's singular, from, of course you're going to use the word an if there's no article here, from an apostle. Okay? Yes.
So that'll be with all the prepositions in the genitive form.
Yes, so every preposition that happens to take its object in the preposition, translate the preposition the way it means
And then drop the
with that case and drop the of. You don't need to use of. Okay, you only use the keywords if you have a noun in one of those cases, dative or genitive, without any preposition. Okay? All right. Let's move on. The next preposition that we see here is the preposition dia. Dia. Everybody say that with me. Dia.
Yeah.
Okay, so the parentheses here gives you D plus an apostrophe. What is that telling you? Yes, you can drop the alpha. It undergoes elision if the next word begins with what? A vowel. Now notice that with apa, we had two different forms, op and af, with apostrophes. Why are there not two different forms of dia when elision happens?
Because it doesn't interfere with the rough reading mark.
Yeah, there's no consonant before the alpha that is being dropped, right? If there's no consonant before the alpha, that consonant's not interacting with breathing marks because they're not a consonant to interact with any breathing marks. So dia just becomes D and then whatever the noun is. Whether it starts with a smooth or rough breathing doesn't matter. Okay? Here, let's just look at the entry now. Notice that it gives you gen and what? Ac. Okay? That means that this preposition could take its object in one of two cases. Not every preposition can take its object in two cases. Apa only takes its object in the genitive case. When a preposition can take its object of the preposition in more than one case, then it's going to have a different meaning depending on the case of its object. Okay? So look at the genitive sense here. When dia is followed by an object of the preposition in the genitive case, it means what? Through. Do you know the word diuretic? Diuretic has the word dia. I'll just write it in English. Dia plus, you know this word urethra, right? What is, well, no, we don't need to ask what a urethra is. But what's happened here? Diuretic has a vowel at the end, followed by a vowel at the beginning. The alpha's dropped off, right? Okay, so a diuretic is a drink that goes right through you, doesn't it? Yes, okay. So this is the genitive, so dia, through. Otherwise, if the noun, the object of the preposition dia, is in the accusative case, it could mean something like on account of or because of, okay? So the meaning of the preposition crucially depends upon the case of the object of the preposition, all right? So when you're learning these prepositions for your vocabulary words, you need to learn the separate meanings based on what the object is what case the object is in.
Can you write an example of how each of those would be used?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'll give you an example. Okay. Let's see. I'll do dia lagu. Okay, notice acute accent when there's nothing else after it, but with another word after it, it changes to grave. Lagu versus dia. Oops, sorry. Dia lagan. Okay, which case is which? Top one is genitive. Bottom one is accusative, right? So how am I going to translate dia lagu? Through a word, right? I'm not putting the article here just to save time. Dia lagan on account of a word. Okay, it's just different meanings for the first part, right? But the a word part is translated the same way. Notice that I don't use any keywords for the object of my preposition because my preposition is doing the duty that the keyword was doing for us before we learned prepositions. Okay?
So will there be times where the article is actually
Mhm.
in there?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Just trying.
Is there any particular reason why it's a long I iota as opposed to a short, like instead of dia, as opposed to kaya, as you've been saying?
Well, we don't pronounce the iota as I, right?
Right.
We pronounce the alpha iota as I,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay, good. Now let's move on. So we have ek. So by the way, happy Reformation month.
500 years.
Yes, 500 years. And there was a guy named Eck who wanted to debate Luther, right? So,
What the heck?
what the heck? Yeah. Okay, so Eck. What case does Eck take its object in?
Genitive.
Genitive. Okay? And what does it mean when it's followed by the genitive case? From, okay, out of. So the idea here, by the way, this is what can make it distinct from apa. The idea is that something's probably enclosed and comes out of it, right? With ek, apa, something is at a location and moves away from it. Very similar notions, but slightly different. Now, does ek take objects of the preposition in any other case besides the genitive? No. So we don't have to worry about any other case happening and trying to memorize multiple meanings based on case, right? So it's beautiful, it's wonderful. The world is as it should be when a preposition only takes one case for its object. We wish it were that way all the time. An alternate version of ek is going to have a xi where the kappa is, all right? And one of these days we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, but if you have a vowel following the kappa, then it becomes the xi, okay? So, ex anthropu, ex apostolou, and so forth. Okay.
The same with rough breathing too.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's a rough or smooth breathing. Okay, so that xi could replace the kappa. All right, flip the page. We have meta. Meta. How many cases can the object of meta be in?
2.
Ah, yes. Meta could be in 2 cases. What are the 2? Genitive and accusative, right? Okay, so pay attention here. The genitive case, meta means with, right? The accusative case, after. Remember, accusative starts with an A, after starts with an A. Okay? A little bit of memory here. This is going to be true for a few of the prepositions we learn. That when there's multiple cases, the one with the accusative, the meaning with the accusative case starts with an A frequently. Okay? All right, so meta. Now, notice that meta ends with an alpha, doesn't it? So if I have a word beginning with a vowel coming after the alpha, what's going to happen?
Drop it.
Yes, elision. It's going to drop Now, is the tau a stop consonant? T. I have to completely stop the airflow to produce a T, right? T, and then it releases. So that's a case where if I have a smooth breathing, it's going to be met, right? Apostalu, for example. But if I had something like, horos, it would be what? Meth. Yes, I know. It sounds like we're doing drugs here, doesn't it? Meth with a rough breathing, because th is a fricative, blowing air through it is easier to pronounce with a h at the same time, right? I can very easily go from th to h. Meth, as opposed to met, okay? Just takes a little bit more effort to do that.
Is it okay if you pronounce those like methoros?
Yes, methoros.
Okay.
Methoros. All right, good. Take a look at para. Para is our next one. Does para end with a vowel?
Yes.
Indeed it does, right? So this is another situation where we could have the loss of that alpha. Now, is the rho of para a stop consonant? No, you're not ceasing all the airflow to produce a rho, are you? In fact, air is escaping from your mouth. And so this one, when you drop the alpha, there aren't going to be two separate versions of that, okay? So it doesn't matter whether a rough breathing or a smooth breathing is with that vowel following. It's just going to be par. Par apostalu, par horas, par horas, okay? All right, how many cases will para be in?
3.
Whoa, genitive, dative, accusative. We hit the jackpot, right? These are the 3 possibilities for our cases. And here are your meanings. Genitive from, dative beside or in the presence of, accusative alongside of. Notice that there's an A, an accusative, and an A with alongside of. So let that help you remember what the meaning is there. Right? And then the last one is hupa. That ends with a vowel, doesn't it? And that means that it could elide if I had a vowel in the next word. Is P a stop consonant? Yes. Then I'm going to have hoop and hoof, depending upon whether I have a smooth breathing or a rough breathing, right? So be aware of that. How many cases can hupa take for its object? 2. Which ones? Genitive and accusative. What does it mean when it's followed by the genitive case? By, and that is expressing the agent of a passive verb. Okay? So he was hit by the man. That's how Greek would indicate it. It would be hupa and the genitive case of man. Okay? If it's followed by the accusative, it means under. Okay? And so the word hupa is related to the prefix hypo in English. Somebody suffering from hypothermia? What does that mean? Hypothermia. Under, therm, heat, right? They're under the necessary heat level. Hypothermia means they're too cold. Okay? If you have a hypodermic needle, it's a needle that goes where? Under the skin. Exactly. So maybe that can help you remember hypo, right? Hypo. Hupa. We wish our children were hypoactive, but alas, they are hyperactive. Hyper means the opposite of under. It means above. Okay? All right. That's not one of your words here. All right. So those are all the prepositions, and we've talked a bit about how prepositions function here. So you have to pay attention to what the case is if they can occur, the objects can occur in more than one case. If they don't, then it's just the one case. And you want to make separate vocab cards for each of these. All right. Now, if we go to Mounce 8.7, he gives you one very helpful bit of information. And I do like this. Sometimes Mounce gives advice and I go, meh. But this is good advice. When memorizing the definition of a preposition, I suggest you use this formula. Blank with the blank means blank. And what he means by that is the word that indicates the preposition. So N with the certain case, dative, means in. Okay? So for your words that have multiple cases for the object, like hoopah, it would be what? Hoopah with the genitive means by. Hoopah with the accusative means under. All right? 8.8, when asked to explain why the object of the preposition is in a given case, I suggest you respond with the complete formula. Blank is in the blank because it is the object of the preposition blank that takes the blank. Alto is in the dative because it is the object of the preposition N that takes the dative case. Of course, that formula as written only works when a preposition only takes one case, right? When it takes multiple cases, you'd have to tweak it a little bit, like with hoopah. Maybe something like altu is in the genitive case because it is the object of the preposition hoopah that takes the genitive case when it means something like by. All right, so it's a little bit limiting when you have multiple possibilities for case. Okay, real quickly, let's talk about the matter of dependent clauses. So this is 8.9 in Mounce. We have independent clauses and dependent clauses. What is an independent clause? A clause that can stand on its own. So, can Santa stand on his own? Is Santa an independent clause?
He has 8 right here.
Yeah. Okay, right. So independent clause can stand on its own. We don't feel like there's anything grammatically missing with the dependent clause, right? So I love you. That's a complete thought, complete idea. Nothing seems to be missing grammatically in that clause. Now, if I had something like because you are awesome, okay? Yeah, it is, huh? I love you because you are awesome. Is because you are awesome able to stand on its own in such a way that you don't feel like you're missing anything? No. It needs to be embedded in a larger clause, right? It needs to be embedded in what we would call an independent clause. And so, when you have independent clauses and dependent clauses together, all right? So if I put independent clause plus dependent clause, I'm going to give you a term that is used in grammar. It's called a complex sentence, okay? A complex sentence. It's a sentence that consists of two clauses where one is embedded in the other, all right? Now, you have already learned the word haughty. How do you translate that? That, since, or because, right? Okay, and now you're going to learn another conjunction called henna. And did we come across that yet? I guess that's in the vocab list here, right? Okay, so this is on page 62. In order that. It could also be translated as that, okay? So both of these conjunctions introduce dependent clauses. We're going to learn some rules about these a little bit in later chapters, but here's what you need to know. Whenever you have an independent clause with hati or hina introducing a dependent clause inside of it, like the hati clause could have been there. I love you, hati, you are awesome. You have to remember that there are going to be subjects, verbs, maybe objects, direct objects, prepositional phrases that function inside each of the clauses, and they only belong within their own clause. Okay? That is to say, if I can just for a moment erase this little arrow, and let's treat this whole thing as one sentence, okay? I love you, we'll get rid of that little period. I love you because you are awesome. How many verbs do I have if I have an independent clause and a dependent clause? I should have 2 verbs, right? Where are my verbs? Love, are. Very good. How many subjects do I have? I is a subject, and you are a subject, right? How many direct objects do I have? I only have one, because the direct object can only be the object of a verb that indicates an action directed toward a person, right? Here I have a verb are, which is what we call the linking verb or a copula, right? We talked about this last week, I think. And those, copula, those types of verbs don't take direct objects, but they do link a subject to a predicate or a subject complement. So I'm going to put SC there for that. Now, the crucial thing here is that in Greek, what case is I going to be in? Nominative. What case is you going to be in? Accusative. Why are these in the cases that they are? Because they are related in function to which important word? Love. The core of the independent clause, I love you, the core, the nucleus of it is the verb. And the verb is going to dictate what other sorts of things, the nouns surrounding it, have to be in terms of their case. Subjects of love have to be nominative. Objects of love have to be accusative, right? Over here, my linking verb are is going to require that its noun, subject noun, be in what case? Nominative, right? What about the adjective awesome? What case is that going to be in? No. We talked about this last week. It's going to be in the nominative case, okay? This verb is the core of the other clause here, and it requires its subject to be a nominative and its predicate to be in the nominative case. So verbs have different sorts of requirements, okay? And what you really have to remember is once you've identified the verbs of the independent clause and the verb of the dependent clause, the things that are tied to the verbs have to hang with the verbs. Don't get them confused with the other verbs and the things that those verbs require. So if I have love as a verb in Greek and a nominative subject I, don't try to make I the subject of the verb are over here, okay? Don't try to take you and stick it inside the dependent clause and give it a function inside the dependent clause. You doesn't belong inside the dependent clause at all, okay? It only belongs inside the main clause, okay? So keep the stuff in the right clause. That's what we want to do. And that can be a little bit difficult when we're looking at a mass of Greek words that all just sort of look like a big blob, right? But as you start to translate them, find out, oh, there's a haughty clause. So I need to try to figure out. I can tell where my haughty clause begins because I see the word what? Haughty, right? But I want to see how far does the haughty clause go. It may go to the period at the end of the verse. But the haughty clause may stop before we get to the end, and it may be tucked inside of the main clause that comes before, and then the rest of the main clause comes after, right?
Don't you know that if you have multiple verbs?
Yeah, so if you have multiple verbs, then you're going to have to think about the verb and ask, what sorts of things might this verb require? Like, does this verb require a direct object? Is it what we call a transitive verb? If it does, I need to try to look for the direct object or the accusative noun. That might go with the verb inside the hadi clause or the hina clause, okay? So we'll get some experience doing this, but just want to warn you here that let your hadi and hina clauses, all the elements of it need to hang together, okay? Don't stick the direct object of the hadi clause somewhere out there with the main clause, okay?
Hina or hin?
Hina. Well, I say it hina. I don't know if it's hina or hina. I wish.
It's iota.
Yeah, I know, but iotas can be long or short, can't they? I wish I could go back and hear.
Tomatoes.
I wish I could go back and hear how they said these things. It would be really nice.
One side of the Mediterranean could have said it one way. The other side of the Mediterranean could have said it another
Yeah,
way.
maybe so. All right. Now, let's talk about the verb ami. Ami is the verb that means to be. You see the forms of it in 8.12. Okay, and we'll recite it here in just a moment. But what you need to know about ami is, first of all, that it has 6 forms, right? 6 forms, and the accent is always on the final syllable, at least in the basic paradigm, okay? So when you're writing this from memory, then you're going to see the accent always on the final syllable. Now, how many syllables does the second form have? Has 1. So is it the case that the accent is on the final syllable? Yes, because it's the only syllable, right? By definition, the only syllable must be the final syllable too, right? Okay, so Greek verbs. We're not going to really get to Greek verbs until we get to chapter 15. But Greek verbs are marked for person and number. Person, number. Remember, we talked about number a little while ago. What are my 2 possible numbers?
First and second.
Nope. Good guess. My possible numbers are singular versus plural, right? Person is going to be first, second, or third, okay? And that can be confusing because 1, 2, and 3 are numbers, aren't they? Okay, but person is first, second, or third. Who is first person? It's I or? Well, yes, but if it's the subject of the verb, it's I or we, okay? I or we. Second person is you, or in Texas, y'all, right? And then third person is, yes, if it's plural, they. If it's not plural, it's he, she, it, okay? So all of those are third person. In other words, anything besides first and second person is third person. So I can use pronouns here, but what if my subject is Moses? Then which person is the verb going to be?
Third.
Yes, third, because Moses is a he, right? Whatever pronoun I would replace that name with is going to be a third person pronoun. So Moses, he. Bertha, she. Third person. She is. If I wanted to say Bertha is, which form am I going to use? The third person singular form, estin, right? So, our verbs are going to be marked for person and number, and that's true here. So all these endings that we're seeing here are part of what's called the personal endings of the Greek verb. Now, you're just going to have to memorize the forms of ami. It is such a common verb. It is the most frequently occurring verb in the Greek language. And you need to know the present tense forms. So, let's say these and we'll just translate them as well. So everybody, ami. So I am, a. Okay, so there's a, I didn't quite put my placement nicely here. I'm going to put that iota just a little bit further underneath. So That's a smooth breathing, right? And the circumflex is above that. It's supposed to be above the iota. A is you are, everybody. Estin. He, she, or it is. Esmen. We are. Este. Y'all are. Asin is they are. We are introduced to, in our chapter, these news that are at the end of the third person singular and plural forms. These are movable. Okay, what does that mean? It means that they technically might be present and might not be. Okay, originally are included to break up the final vowel of the iotas here when the next word would have begun with a vowel. But you almost never see these forms without the nu, even if a consonant comes after. All right? It's as if they kind of got frozen on here. Mounce mentions that I think it's the third singular that happens one time without the movable nu, and never does it occur without the movable nu in the third plural, okay, in the Greek New Testament. So just to get used to seeing the nu there, all right? We're going to see movable nus elsewhere. When I have a subject of the verb ami, it will be what case? What case will my subject be? Subjects are what case? Nominative, right? And then when I want to say what someone is, what case will the thing that he or she is be?
Also not.
Yes, this is going to be in the nominative case as well, okay? So if I want to say something like, I am a man, anthropos will be nominative singular, right? If I say she is a man, well, no, what do I say? She is a woman. We don't know the word for woman yet, do we? What case would woman be in? Nominative case, okay? So I'm going to have nominative on both sides of the verb to be. Who is being and what that person is. They both have to be nominative case. All right? So those will be called predicate nominatives. All right. That's all I want to say about the chapter. I do want to go over any questions that you might have about the chapter. So let's do that, all right?